Give me a beer. Alright, this is Billy Bob Tanley here, people, and this is a request from Cringy Video Request, and it was uploaded by Khan Academy, and the name of the video is Basic Trigonometry, Trigonometry, Khan Academy. Okay, let's check it out. Yay.
In this video, I want to give you the basics of trigonometry. Trigonometry. And it sounds like a very complicated topic.
Well,
but you're
if it's
going
one
to
of
see
these
that's really just
videos
a
where I'm
study
supposed to
of
understand
the
shit,
ratios of
good luck with
sides
that.
of
It's not gonna
triangles.
work.
The trig part of trigonometry literally means triangle, and the metry part literally means measure. So let me just give you some examples here, and I think it'll make everything pretty clear.
This is a long-ass video,
So
too.
let me draw some right
just
triangles.
gonna do
Let me
this?
just draw one right triangle. So this is a right triangle. When I say it's a right triangle, it's because one of the angles here is 90 degrees. This right here is a right. That right there is a right angle. It is equal to 90.
I'm out here
it
to
is
do math.
equal to 90 degrees. And we'll talk about other ways to show the magnitude of angles in future videos. So we have a 90-degree angle. It's a right triangle. Let me put some lengths to the sides here. So this side over here is maybe 3. This height right over there is 3.
Man? What the
Maybe
fuck?
the base of the triangle right over here is 4.
The whole entire video is just going to be this shit.
Triangle.
Don't expect me to understand
the triangle
it.
over here is 5. You
I
only
don't
have a
pick 'em,
hypotenuse
people.
when you have a right triangle. It is the side opposite
I'm not even going to
the
try to
right
understand
angle,
this.
and it is the longest side of a right triangle. So that right there is the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse. You probably learned that already from geometry. And you can verify that this right triangle,
I don't even know if I took
out. We know
geometry
from the
or not.
Pythagorean theorem that 3 squared plus 4 squared plus 4 squared has got to be equal to the length of the longest side, the length of the hypotenuse squared,
this is
equal
just
to 5 squared. So you can verify that this works out. This satisfies the Pythagorean
This ain't really
theorem.
something
Now, with
a
that out of the way,
reactor
let's
should
learn
be
a little
watching,
bit
though.
of trigonometry. So the core functions of trigonometry. We're going to learn a little bit more about what these functions mean. There is the sine, the sine function. There is the cosine function.
Maybe you can understand
there
this,
is
some
the
of you out
tangent
there.
function. And you write sine, cos,
does
or
this make it
sin,
exciting?
cos, and tan for short.
You
And
entertained
these
by
really
this?
just specify for any angle in this triangle, it'll specify the ratios of certain sides. So let me just write something out. And this is a little bit of a mnemonic here, so something just to help you remember the definitions of these functions. But I'm going to write down something. It's called
This says at school.
SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA. You'll be amazed how far this mnemonic will take you in trigonometry. So we have SOHCAHTOA. And what this tells us is, so tells us that sine,
well, it is a cringy video,
is
right?
equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite
if it just
over
to make me feel
hypotenuse.
bored,
It's telling us.
it's working.
And this won't make a lot of sense just yet. I'll do it a little bit more detail in a second. And then cosine is equal to
I don't know if anybody else is watching along with me
over
right now.
hypotenuse.
They probably already stopped.
Cosine is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. And then you finally have tangent. You have tangent. Tangent is equal to opposite over adjacent.
Okay.
Opposite over adjacent. So you're probably saying, hey, Sal, what is this, all this opposite, hypotenuse,
I'm
adjacent?
not caring,
what are we talking
man.
about?
I don't
Well,
give
let's
a
take an
shit.
angle here. Let's take an angle here. Let's say that this angle right over here, this angle right over here is theta, between the side of length 4 and the side of length 5.
Take your vitamins,
this angle right here is
people.
theta. So let's figure out what the sine of theta, the cosine of theta, and what the
I don't know, I'm
tangent
just showing
of theta
things.
are. So if we want to first focus on the sine of theta,
Need
the
some eye
sine
drops.
of theta,
Take some
we just have to
pure
remember
eyes.
SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So sine of theta is equal to the opposite. So what's
this
the
video's
opposite
not even
side
over
to
with
the
yet,
angle?
but
So this is our angle right here. The opposite side.
I'm not even
the
going to try to
opposite side, if you
understand it.
just
I already
go
told
the
you.
opposite side, so not one of the sides that are kind of adjacent to the angle.
I'm just going
The
to dance a
opposite
little
side is the
bit.
3. If you're just kind of, it's opening onto that 3. So the opposite side is 3. And then what's the hypotenuse? The hypotenuse, well, we already know the hypotenuse here is 5. So it's
Lay's stacks potato
3
chips,
over
people.
5. The sine of theta is 3/5. So some say,
They're
hey,
not
what's the sine
bad.
of that? It's 3/5. And I'm going to show you in a second that the sine of theta if this angle is a certain
Okay,
angle,
Professor
it's always
man.
going to be 3/5. The ratio of the opposite to the
I'm
hypotenuse
gonna
is
do
always
like I
going to
used to
be the
do in
same,
school, just put
even
my
if the
head on the
actual
desk and
triangle
not
were a
listen to
larger
you.
triangle or a smaller one. So I'll show you that in a second. But let's go through all of the trig functions.
Not
Let's think
everybody
about what the
learns
cosine.
this shit.
Let's think about what the cosine of theta is.
It sure doesn't
Cosine
help you
is
make it through the day.
adjacent over hypotenuse. So remember, this let me label them. We already figured out that the 3 was the opposite side. This is the opposite side. And only when we're talking about this angle. When you talk about this angle, this side is opposite to it.
Come
When you talk
on,
about this
people.
angle,
Don't send me
this
videos
4
like
side is
this.
adjacent to it. It's one of the sides that kind of
I don't
make
want to
up
bore my
that kind of
audience
form the
now.
vertex here. So
Because
this
when I'm
right here
being
is an
bored,
adjacent
chances
side.
are you're all getting
Adjacent.
bored.
And I want to be very clear. This only applies to this angle. If we were talking about that angle, then this green side would be opposite, and this
Yeah, I
yellow
feel like
side
I'm
would be
being
adjacent.
trolled
But we're
here.
just focusing on this angle right over here. So cosine of this angle, we hear about adjacent. Well, the adjacent side of this angle is 4. So it is adjacent over the hypotenuse. It's the adjacent, which is 4, over the hypotenuse. 4 over 5. Now let's do the tangent. Let's do the tangent.
Y'all like that
The
chewing
tangent
gum,
of
juicy
theta.
fruit? That's some
Opposite
good
over
shit,
adjacent.
people.
The opposite side is 3. The opposite side is 3. What is the adjacent side? We already figured that out. The adjacent side is 4. So knowing the sides of this right triangle, we were able to figure out the major trig ratios. And we'll see there are other trig ratios, but they can all be derived from these
King of
three
beers,
basic
man.
trig
Good
functions.
shit.
Now, let's think about another angle in this triangle. And I'll redraw it just because my triangle is getting a little bit messy. So let's redraw the exact same triangle. The exact same triangle. And
Go
once
out
again,
and
the
get
lengths
laid,
of this
man.
triangle are, we have length 4 there. We have length 3 there. We have length 5 there. The last example, we just
Is this a
used
college
this
guy,
theta. But
professor, or teacher or
let's do
something
another
teaching this
angle.
shit?
Let's do another
To
angle
his
up
students
here.
that watch.
Let's do another angle up here. And let's call this angle, I don't know, I'll think of something, a random Greek letter.
Why don't you
So let's
make a
say it's
triangle,
xi.
man? A
I
complete
know it's a
triangle.
little bit bizarre. Theta is what you normally use, but since I already used theta, let's use xi. Actually, even instead of xi, let me just simplify it. Let me call this angle x. Let's call that angle x. So let's figure out the trig functions for that angle x. So we have sine of x is going to be equal to what? Well, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So what side is opposite to x? Well, it opens onto this 4. It opens onto the 4. So in this context, this is now the opposite. This is now the opposite side. Remember, 4 was adjacent to this theta, but it's opposite to x. So it's going to be 4 over. Now, what's the hypotenuse? Well, the hypotenuse is going to be the same regardless of which angle you pick.
See right there,
So the
people? That's
hypotenuse
easy to
is now
understand.
going to be
It's
5.
It's
So
going to
it's
be
4/5.
5. Your 4/5.
Now let's do another one. What is the cosine? What is the cosine of x?
I'm doing
So
good.
cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. What side is adjacent to x? That's not the hypotenuse. You have the hypotenuse here. Well, the 3 side.
Yep.
It forms,
That's
it's one
right.
of the sides that forms the vertex that x is at, and it's not the hypotenuse, so this is
Yep,
the
you're
adjacent
doing good,
side.
man.
That is adjacent.
I'm
so
proud
it's
of
equal to 3 over the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is 5.
That's right.
And then finally, the tangent.
Now, what is the answer to this next
We
thing?
want to figure
You
out
can
the
tell me.
tangent of x. Tangent is opposite over adjacent.
Correct.
SOHCAHTOA. Tangent
You're
is
doing
opposite
good,
over
because, you
adjacent.
know,
Opposite
I taught you
over
well. You're
adjacent.
my student.
The opposite side is 4. I want to do it in that blue color. The opposite side is
You're running out of
4,
room.
and the adjacent side is 3. And we're done. In the
Great.
next video, I'll do a ton of more examples.
I don't want to see
a
a next
really
video.
get a feel for it. But I'll
I
leave
think
you
I've had
thinking
my
of
fill
what
here,
happens
man.
when these angles
No
start to
thanks.
approach 90 degrees, or how could they even get larger than 90 degrees. And what we're going to see is that this definition, the SOHCAHTOA definition, takes us a long way for angles that are between 0 and 90 degrees, or that are less than 90 degrees. But they kind of
Very
start to
good.
mess up really at the boundaries. And we're going to
Your
introduce a
teacher
new
is
definition
proud
that's
of what
kind of
you've learned
derived from
today.
the SOHCAHTOA definition for finding the sine, cosine, and tangent of really any angle.
Alright, so there you go, everyone. If y'all want to watch the original video, the link is in the description. Go check it out and shit, and I'm getting the fuck out of here, so yeah. My name is Billy Bob Tanley, and I approve this message.